happy Sunday to you all. Thank you for joining me for this impromptu podcast. I actually hadn't planned on really doing a podcast today, but I'll get into that later. I think there might be a lot of reflection on my glasses, so I apologize in advance. I take them off, but then I won't be able to see what I'm doing. So hopefully it's not too distracting for you. And I guess I have a few things I do actually want to show you. I was hoping to kind of put them all, or save them up and put them all into one for one big post Australian Wool and Sheep Show podcast for you all. But unfortunately, Melbourne and regional Victoria, where the show was being held, are now under a snap lockdown. So that meant that the entire show had to be cancelled, and all of us here in the state of Victoria, if you know Australia, we are split into states, so all of the state of Victoria, I think the whole of the state of New South Wales, we're all under a very strict lockdown. So everything had to be cancelled, and there's a lot of cancellation going on at the moment. So I thought one way I could actually distract myself from the disappointment of not being able to go was to record this for you and show you the things that I have finished, the things that I've been working on, and maybe talk a little bit about other ways that I've been able to hopefully support some of the vendors at who was supposed to be at the sheep show. So yes, I would just like to say, first of all, I keep saying first of all, but I said a lot of things first. Anyway, I'm rambling. I would just like to say a massive thank you to all the new subscribers. I guess I should introduce myself a little bit. So if you're here for the first time, my name is Sian. I live in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia, Southern Hemisphere, so it's currently winter, and I'm fairly new to knitting. I started properly knitting clothes November, December last year, 2020, and prior to that I had dabbled in knitting with the odd scarf, you know, kind of I guess garter stitch is what it's called, garter stitch stuff, where you just knit each row and then you turn and you knit each row, and I just knitted on straight needles, and I got bored pretty easily because I like to challenge myself, but I always thought that knitting was way out of my skill, my capabilities, I guess, to knit something properly. So it wasn't really until November, December last year that I really gave it a proper go. Decided to dive straight in with knitting a cardigan, and yeah, it's been kind of all go since then. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it and really embraced it. So I usually sew. I've been sewing, self-taught sewist for about 4 years now. Learnt by, like I did with knitting, by watching lots of YouTube videos, reading blogs, and just trial and error, just diving in, giving things a go and learning as I make my mistakes, which seems to be the best way to learn for me. So yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. I'm sure I could babble on more about myself, but you're here for the knitting. So yeah, so thank you again for joining me, all you wonderful new subscribers and you amazing original subscribers. I really am so grateful for you for being here and watching this. So I think it's been about 2 weeks since I released an actual podcast. About a week ago I did release one of my, the very first in the making short, which was about my Magnolia bloom sweater. So we'll get started with that first of all. I do have it here. I was going to wear it, but it's a little bit see-through in the bust. The yarn overs and the eyelet kind of features are a bit much, and I just wanted to kind of be cozy this afternoon in my Wednesday sweater. So I think I talked about this in my very first episode. I haven't talked about it thoroughly, but we can come back to that later. So, the Magnolia Bloom. I know I kind of went into a bit of detail in my in the making episode, but this is my sweater, and it's a bit big, I have to say. I think I have a little bit of a distorted idea of what size I am and I am overcompensating by knitting the largest sizes and things. So with this Magnolia Bloom, I decided to knit the largest size because when I was knitting my gauge, it was slightly off, so I had more stitches than the gauge recommended, so that means that if it would work out smaller than the finished measurements. Yeah. So yes, I knitted the largest size. I really like the design. I like the style on me as well. I honestly had never thought that I would enjoy wearing a lace yoke, but I really think it's very pretty. I made up the weight of the yarn based on what I had in my stash, and I used 3 separate yarns for this, but if I was to make it again, I'd just choose the right weight yarn in the first place and just use that plus a mohair, because it's a lot heavier than I think it needs. Sorry, it's a lot heavier than I think it should be, and that then also stretches out the knitted fabric. It's still beautiful and I love it and I will wear it more. I just haven't had the opportunity to wear it that much since I finished it. I wore it to work one day, and then yeah, we haven't really been out since because we're still in a hybrid working environment at the moment where we're still working from home majority of the time. So if I'm at home, I'm not really gonna wear a pretty jumper. This has become my work from home jumper, really. It's got quite a lot of wear. But yeah, so the Magnolia Bloom, I had some yarn from Knit Picks back in December. I got really kind of trigger happy with online shopping, buying yarn. I was really excited about knitting things, so I heard about Knit Picks, and I think if you ordered over $100 worth, you got free shipping, and shipping to Australia from the US is expensive anyway, so I thought free shipping, boom, done, sold. So I bought a sweater quantity of their Wool of the Andes worsted in Heather Haze, and also their Aloft mohair. And I just thought these two went really beautifully together. The Heather Haze is a really lovely lavender lilac colour, and when knitted up, it's just beautiful. It's really soft, but it's got some nice depth of colour. The feel of the yarn, it's nice. It's not rustic at all. It's still soft, and when knitted up, it's really quite soft. I am not sure I would use it again. It's a Peruvian Highland wool, I think, but I'm not sure I'd use it again. I've become a bit of a yarn snob. So, you know how there are coffee snobs out there? I've become a bit of a yarn snob, and I really want to try more kind of like ethical, ethically produced yarns and things like that. I'll get into that later. But yes, I had these, but I couldn't actually make a gauge with these two. So I needed something almost like a lace weight, lace between lace and fingering. So I hopped on to a local online Australian shop and found this Isaiah Spinny, which is a pure new wool. It's a single spun, so it's just like I guess a single strand that's twisted, and it's a lilac, a purple dyed on a grey base. So the colour is 12S, and it's really beautiful. I really like it. I would probably use it again. I'm not sure what for, but I do have some leftovers, so maybe I will knit myself a hat or something in the future, because I have a little bit left out. I think I have 2 balls of the worsted wool of the Andes, one of the spinny, 1.5 of the spinny, so I've got it in my bag down there, and a little bit of the Aloft Kid Silk mohair. So I love mohair. I'm collecting all my little bits and bobs left over from projects, and one day I'll make one of those Lackeberger scrappy sweaters that she makes the most amazing stuff. So yeah. So going back to the sizing, I knitted the largest size. As I said, I couldn't get gauge, so my gauge was slightly tighter than suggested. So I thought if I went with the largest size, it would at least then fit me as it should. It fits me, it's just a little bit oversized, and yes, if I was to make it again, I would definitely go down a size. In terms of construction, I don't really like the neckline, but then I'd never knitted a folded rib neckline before. It's not the construction, like the actual construction of it, I don't like, it's the look of it. It's okay, but it's not my favorite. I think I prefer just a single like rib neckline, and then if you want to fold it over you can. So I was considering going back and ripping it out, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to give this a bit of wear and see how it goes. Yeah, and I don't know if it's just me, so I mean, it just asks for a rib on the neckline, but when you do a half twisted rib, so when you just twist your knit stitches and you don't twist your pearls, does the rib end up less stretchy? So that's a question to you. So I'm fairly new to this, so I don't know which is stretchier, which has more recovery. So when in sewing, when we talk about stretchy fabric, knit fabric, we talk about recovery. So if you stretch it out, will it spring back if you let it go? And will it kind of recover back to its original, I guess, measurement? I just feel that with half twisted rib, it doesn't have as good recovery as it would with maybe a normal rib or a full twisted rib where you twist both the knits and the pearls. So this here is a full twisted rib. On the cuffs on this, it's a half twisted rib. So on the inside, you see the pearls are not twisted, and these have stretched out quite considerably. So that's my question to you. Which has better recovery? Normal rib, full twisted rib, half twisted rib? Is there any difference? I don't know. Yeah, so the whole point of that being that I really love the look of a twisted rib, and I only did a half twisted rib on this neckline, but it just doesn't have as much recovery. I also don't know if it's because of the weight of the fabric of the jumper as well. Maybe it's stretching it out and just weighing it down. So I have reinforced the neckline quite considerably with some shearing elastic that I had in my sewing stash. So yeah, and I finished off the cuffs with again a half twisted rib on this, but it's a really beautiful knit. I would definitely knit it again. I did find the lace work really addictive. I did struggle though with the noops or nops, so the bobbles. I just kind of feel like they keep retreating and hiding. It probably isn't as noticeable from a distance or on camera, but yeah, it's lovely, but it's quite heavy. So yeah, you know, it's all part of the learning process. You try things out, you experiment, and I mean, just look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I do love it, don't get me wrong, I do love it. I'm just a little bit self-critical. So yeah, but yeah, it's all part of the learning process. Anyway, so that is the Magnolia Bloom. The next thing I will talk to you about is my Ranunculus. So I know there are so many people who have made the Ranunculus sweater, and I can see why it's so popular. it was, or is, a beautiful pattern. I mean, just, it was really easy to knit and really addictive to knit the repeating kind of lacework stitches. And the result is just absolutely gorgeous. And the fact that it's apparently, sorry, I just need to take pressure off my foot. The fact that it is apparently really versatile and you can use lots of different weights of yarn with it. I just kind of dived in and I really wanted more of a woolly, cozy ranunculus. So instead of using a fingering weight, I think call for fingering, I just kind of used a sport weight. I used, well, it's worked out to be a sport weight with a mohair. And this is my finished ranunculus. It's really beautiful. She's so soft and cozy. I really love the stitch pattern on the yoke. A circular yoke is absolutely lovely. I really enjoy knitting them. And it's just something that, yeah, it's so feminine and delicate, and yet I don't feel really girly in it, which is great because I'm not really a girly person. I did change up a few things. So I didn't knit the standard size because I understand it's a one size pattern, but there are modifications. So I think from the size 38-inch bust up to, I can't remember what size bust, there are modifications. But with this one, I went with the 40-inch bust modification. I used the same needle size as suggested by the pattern, which was 6mm, and I used, what's going on? There we go. So the yarn I used for this was a mix of the Juniper Moon Farm Patagonia Organic Merino and an Australian yarn dyer, an online shop called the Pearl Box. They do their own yarns called Oyster Yarns, and this is their fluff, and it's a mohair silk blend. And this one was in the colorway Sea Squall. So it was 72% mohair, 28% silk, and the Juniper Moon Farms is a non-mulesed wool. It's 350 meters per 100 grams, which I understand puts it in a sport weight, and it's 100% organic. And it's humanely grown in Argentina. Yeah. The colour I chose for this one is called Icicle, so it's a really nice heathered blue with white in between. So I don't know if you can see that properly, but that is the colourway. And it is a sport, but I believe that once you wash it, it blooms and becomes a DK weight. Because it was classified as a DK in the online shop I bought it from, and I would quite happily call that a DK when I compare it with what I'm wearing, which is a DK. But it is so light and fluffy, and I'm pretty sure the mohair has something to do with that, but I was just really impressed with this. I would definitely use this again, and it has almost like a sticky, not sticky quality, but a grippy quality, so I guess it would be excellent for colour work as well. So something to think about. Yeah, I really like it, and I have loads left over. I bought 3 skeins of 350 meters, and I kind of expected to use up most of those 3 skeins, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much almost a whole skein left over. So really it was only like 2 and a bit. And I only used 2 skeins of the, well, just under 2 skeins of the silk mohair, because I have a whole skein left over and a little bit more of the other one. So in terms of economy, that was really good value. I mean, I think this is only 17 Australian dollars per skein, so that's really good value. Yeah, because it's really difficult to get anything of that meterage for less than say 25 generally. Yeah, it can be quite, but this is an expensive hobby. But it's a lovely one and I'm loving it. So yes, so I went with a 40-inch bust. I wanted something slightly different for the sleeves than what the pattern suggests. So what I did was I slimmed down the sleeves. So the first time I tried doing it, I was like, oh, I'll do it like the Wednesday sweater where every however many rows you then reduce it by 2 stitches. So on either side of the beginning of round marker you reduce it by 1 stitch. So I tried that with this, but I reduced it too quickly. So it started reducing it too quickly and it became a little bit tight around my arms because I have lady guns and I need the room to move. So I needed to be sure I didn't reduce it too quickly. So I pulled it back, and what I ended up doing was reducing it by 1 stitch every 7 or 8 rows or so. And I actually documented this. So if you want to do this yourself, I highly suggest doing it this way. And what I ended up doing was once I picked up the stitches that were put aside, I knit 15 rows and then I slip knit 2 stitches before the beginning of round. So I reduced by 1 stitch. So what I mean by 2 stitches is I stopped 2 stitches before the beginning of the round, and then I slip knit them together to reduce it by 1 stitch. And then every 7 rows, I then alternated between knitting 2 together after the beginning of row and then slip knit before the beginning of the row, so that either side of the beginning of the round or beginning of row marker, I was reducing, you know, 1 and then the other, and then 1, then the other, then 1, then the other. So yes, so for a total of 10 stitches. So I started off with a certain amount of stitches here, and then I reduced by 10 all the way down to the cuff. And at the cuff, I did a half twisted rib of about 3 inches, and it really sits rather nicely on my wrist. So it sits at watch length, so actual wrist length. So it's not too long, it's not too short, it's just the right length, and I'm really pleased with it. So that was the modification I made there. I did make, I guess, a modification on the body. The only modification really was the length. The pattern suggested a 10 centimeter and then begin the rib, but I decided to lengthen it, and then I just stopped where it felt right and started knitting the rib, and then I bound off because I knitted maybe like an inch deep rib, and I bound off and then started on the sleeves. But I then went back later because I wasn't happy with the rib because it kept bending, like it kept folding on itself, and it just kind of looked wrong. So I then undid the bind off and continued probably for another inch, almost an inch, and then I finished that with an Italian bind off. So yeah, I really love it. And I finished it off with a cute little bespoke label, and these labels are by Kylie and the Machine. She is a lovely Australian woman who lives in Brisbane, and she has her online shop. She designs these cute little labels. I usually use them for my sewing, but I figured I may as well start using them in my knitting as well. So yeah. Oh, one thing I did want to mention actually about the Ranunculus. For the neckline, I believe it suggested a oh god, what's it called? Provisional cast on. I tried doing a provisional cast on, but it blew my mind and I gave up. So I just cast on with a long tail cast on, I believe it was for the wide neck, although I'm not really sure what the difference was. Maybe it was the number of stitches, I can't quite remember. But either way, this was the wide neck, but I did a long tail cast on, and it sits really beautifully. It's not too wide, it's not too tight. Normal long tail cast on. It's fine, and I'm not, you know, I'm not fussy about it. And I honestly don't understand the point of a provisional cast on. So yeah, I'm sure one day when it becomes a necessity, I'll figure out how to do it properly and the purpose behind it. It's like with sewing. When I first started to sew, I always wondered why you had to understitch the facing on a neckline, and I never did that for years. And then one day I did it and I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing my whole life? This is great. It seems like a completely unnecessary step, but it makes a huge difference. So maybe one day I'll feel that way about a provisional cast on. Before I put this aside, I'm just trying to remember if there's anything else. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for the Ranunculus. I love it. It's adorable. It's so cute. Oh, and I actually, when I went to the office the other day, I was in the lift wearing my Ranunculus with my me-made denim pencil skirt, and I got a really lovely compliment from someone I'd never met before. She was just like, I love your whole outfit. It's lovely. I was like, oh, thanks. You know, I was always tempted to say, I made it all, but I didn't, because then you get people asking, will you make something for me? Yeah, so that is the 2 finished objects, really, that I have, that I finished since we last spoke. I have started something new, and if you've been following along on my Instagram stories, you would have seen that I started doing some dyeing. I bought a cone of some beautiful DK weight merino, 100% woolen spun merino yarn a while back, and I was going to use it. It's about 2 sweater quantities worth, so I was going to use half of it for a sailor sweater. I did actually start that, but then I kind of got bored and I got all inspired to instead dye up the yarn that I had kind of cleaned and skeined up. So what I did was I found the perfect shade of coral color in the RIT dye, liquid RIT dye, and I thought, oh, you know, if I dyed this up, I think it would go beautifully with this mohair that I bought from Skein Yarn, and this is it all caked up. And I just got all inspired to try something. So I dyed up the yarn and it's turned out absolutely beautifully. It's a gorgeous coral color, and when paired with the mohair, it almost becomes slightly neon. In some lights it's a little bit muted, but in other lights it looks like a neon papaya dream. So it's gorgeous, and I actually have that here to show you. So where's the beginning of round? Where do we start? And I don't want to drop any stitches. Here we go. Okay, so this is the beginnings of a tulip jumper, and the pattern is by Melody Hoffmann, or B Mandarins. And I just honestly, when I say I was inspired to dye out the fabric, I was like, you know what, that jumper is so cute. The scalloped hem is absolutely adorable. I have this gorgeous mohair. It really deserves to be knitted up with something that goes so well with it. And I'd swatched so many different colors of pinks, and things that I could find locally, and I just couldn't find the right color. So when I did a little test dye of the yarn, and I knitted it up with the mohair, it looked absolutely beautiful. I mean, as you can see, it's absolutely gorgeous. So I thought it kind of looks tulip colors. Like, I love tulips, they're one of my favorite flowers. So let's knit up a tulip jumper in tulip colors. I know the mohair is called papaya, but it kind of looks tulipy, you know. So yes, that's my current obsession. So I'm working on this. I'm also still working on the Bennett sister shawl for my mum, but it's on tiny needles and with fingering weight, and I'm really struggling to get the motivation to move on with it. Do you have a favorite like weight of yarn or size needle that you like to work with? Mine tends to be, well, I feel like mine tends to be like a 5mm needle, 4.5 at the smallest, but yeah, 5-6mm. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I like the speed at which you're able to produce a jumper. And by speed, I don't mean it's actually that quick. I mean, like, literally it takes me a month to finish a jumper. But I almost feel like I'm getting nowhere when I'm knitting with much smaller needles. So maybe that'll change one day, you know, maybe my preference will change, but for now the 5mm is quite good. So I do like a DK weight yarn, and I prefer to work on a DK weight. Yeah, DK, worsted, sport, yeah, that kind of thing. But I think this will look beautiful once it's finished. And I'm going to do the cropped version so that I can wear it with skirts. And because I'm chubbier, jumpers the waistbands tend to not flare, but like with this, it rolls under. So I wanted to keep it cropped, so it's almost like at that empire waist line, so the scalloped hem will stay intact rather than being flared out or rolled under or whatever. And then if I have, you know, nice skirts for summer or for spring, I can wear it over the top of those, or even on a cold night in summer, which is very infrequent here, but you know, on a cool evening I can wear my tulip jumper over a warm a summery dress from the warm day. So yeah, so this is my current work in progress. I do have some acquisitions as well to show you, which are currently in the picture. But I have also been making, to keep myself occupied, I've been making my own stitch markers. I ordered a few beads and like tiger tail and things online last week, and I made myself some cute little stitch markers, and I also made some progress keepers. So there we go. I just spent about an hour or so last night sorting through my beads, and I made these progress keepers. I'd had a look online for some cute ones, but nothing really kind of took my fancy. And I thought, you know what, give me a few bits and pieces, some findings and tiger tail and beads, and I can make my own to my own liking. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on as well. I don't know if you remember these from the last episode, but this is 2 stems of orchids that my parents gave me probably about a month. No, how long's it been? 2, 3, maybe it's almost a month. Maybe about a month ago. And as they've started to, I guess, age and slowly die, they've actually changed color. So they were more a yellowy green, like a yellowy new green color. And they have become really pink in the center. So I'm still collecting them as they fall off their stem because they're so pretty. Yeah. So acquisitions. Since we last spoke, I got really excited about trying some more rustic yarn. I say more rustic yarns, I mean about trying rustic yarns, not trying more of the rustic yarns, because this would be the first that I've tried. So I have investigated some Alafoslopi Plotulopi, I think you call it, and I had a look online. You can't get it anywhere here in Australia. You can buy it online in the US and the UK and also in Iceland. So I did a little bit of calculation and I had a look at a couple of websites. I think it was Wool Warehouse in the UK and also the Alafos website in Iceland. And the Alafos website actually had a massive sale. They were selling this for, I think, €2.99 per plate, reduced down from $6.99 per plate. Excuse me. And even after the really expensive postage, which was so worth it, by the way, these still worked out cheaper than buying from Wool Warehouse. So I treated myself to 2 sweater quantities worth of Plotulopi in these 2 colors. And I got the light grey heather is the bottom one, and the winter blues, winter navy or winter heather blues, I should have looked at this beforehand, in Plotulopi, and they are absolutely beautiful. I really love the depth of colour in the blues. There's some almost like light marine blue splashes throughout, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to pair them with a same colour mohair and see how they knit up. I'll do what everyone else does on Instagram when they show you Plotulopi, because it's an unspun yarn. So it's a rustic unspun yarn, and what everyone does is to demonstrate this, and I do love it, is to show you the yarn itself, and then because it's not spun, if you pull on it, it breaks apart. But then it doesn't matter, because all you have to do is lay it over itself again and give it a little rub, and there you have it. You can continue knitting with it, because apparently the hairs, the fibers that it's made with, are really long and stable, so you can knit this up and it won't be as delicate as it is on its own. So as you knit it, it stabilizes and becomes really strong and hard wearing. And the sample that I just showed, so that's a sample of the grey. That's it knitted up on 6 millimeter needles and held double. So it's really quite pretty. Yeah, it is very rustic. So as I said earlier, I've become a bit of a yarn snob and I'm leaning more towards the kind of sustainable, or oh God, what's the word? Not untreated. I guess more rustic, more authentic yarns. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by them. It's really nice to see something. I don't know, like there's a lot of superwash yarns out there, and I've knitted with superwash once, no, a couple of times. I'm lying, it's a couple of times, a couple of small things for my goddaughters, and also the As If Tea, that was mainly a superwash yarn, and yeah, that was great. But I really like the more earthy feeling of knitting with something a little bit more rustic, a little bit closer to its original, a little bit more authentic to it, I guess, its original form, you know, from sheep to fleece, you know, sheep's fleece to yarn. So yeah, so that's why I kind of leaned more towards the undyed nature of this. This is a DK Polworth from Wild Earth Yarns, and it's not been treated, it's not a superwash. The other things I've knitted haven't been superwash. Actually, I might have just lied to you. This Knit Picks Peruvian Highland Wool, well, it says hand wash, so I'm going to assume that it's a non-superwash. So yeah, I tend to like to knit in a non-superwash. So trying out rustic yarns is just the next step for that, and just to get, I don't know, it just kind of makes me feel more connected with nature, I guess. Yeah, and I think I may have mentioned last time, but I got an order in with for Nutiden yarn from Honor och Air. I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but you'll forgive me. And I'm still waiting on it to arrive. It was their June release, and I think it's been about 3 weeks now. So they say allow up to 6 to 8 weeks. Hopefully it'll be here soon. But yeah, I got totally sidetracked. When I said expensive postage, I think it cost me 40 Australian dollars to have these two things posted to me. But they were sent DHL Express, and they arrived from Iceland within 3 days. 3 days. It's crazy. So good. I mean, I didn't need them that quickly. I would have happily paid less and got them, you know, now 3 weeks later. But still, I'm really impressed. And value-wise, 100 gram plate worked out, including the postage, if you mush all the costs together and divide that by the number of plates I got, it worked out to be about $10 a plate. So that is really reasonable. That's on par with Wild Earth Yarns in New Zealand, which I think there were 8 or 9 Australian dollars per 100 grams gain. Really good value, and a fantastic and accessible way to try the Plottulopi. So yeah, totally worth it. And I will knit with it soon. I just get, you know, you can only knit so much, but I certainly have enough to keep me occupied for the next few months. Yeah. I think that's all I have really to show you in terms of acquisitions. So my Plottulopi, what I've been making, my stitch markers, which I just dropped back behind the pile of Plottulopi. But going back to the Australian Wool and Sheep show, so even though we couldn't attend this weekend, I know there are a lot of us on Instagram trying to track down the stall holders or the vendors, people selling yarn and things like that, who were supposed to be there at the show, and we're all trying to support them still by purchasing their bits and pieces online. So I've made a couple of purchases. So although I don't have them yet, they will be acquisitions or stashquisitions in the next episode. And I really wanted to try out a few different types of yarn again. I've always wanted to try a yak or a camel, yak and camel fiber yarn. And also I have coming some hand spun silk that is dyed with natural indigo. So I'm very excited to see that. So yeah, so I will share those with you next time. But I think I have rambled on long enough for today's impromptu episode. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you'll join me in the next episode. And for now, just take care of yourselves. It's a crazy world we live in. Keep well, get vaccinated, keep your loved ones safe, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.